Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, or MTG as she's known, represents Georgia's 14th congressional district. She was first elected in 2020 and has twice been re-elected. Early in her tenure, the outspoken businesswoman courted controversy, and within a month of being sworn into Congress, she was removed from all congressional committees. 2 years later, she was appointed to congressional committees and now serves as chair of the DOJ subcommittee. She is a vocal supporter of President Trump. She's a Christian, a conservative, she's athletic, and she takes great pride in being firm in her convictions.
I want to know when this town is going to...
I sat down with Congresswoman Greene in her Washington, D.C. office. Thanks for doing this with us.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
You are the chairwoman of the DOJ subcommittee. Before we dive into the specifics, what's the overall mission of that subcommittee?
Well, this was one of the biggest parts on the campaign right before America historically elected President Trump. People are absolutely outraged at $36 trillion in debt and where their money's going. And so the purpose of the DOJ Subcommittee on Oversight is to dive into waste, fraud, and abuse and highlight the things that Americans really need to know about how their money's been spent.
Now, you're having a hearing, and I'm going to read it to make sure I get the name right. It says, unfair play, keeping men out of women's sports. Tell me about that, the purpose of that hearing.
Well, this was an issue that we thought we defeated back in 2024. However, this is an issue that Democrats continue to embrace. As a matter of fact, they continue to fight for it. And even though Title IX is being violated every single time a biological man competes in women's sports, and even though President Trump signed an executive order to stop it, we're still seeing biological men invade women and continue to declare this war on women.
You know, men are bigger, faster, stronger, just that's the way Mother Nature created it. But I know in Congress, the argument continues. In the American public, just general people, mom and dad and their 2 kids that are living in Georgia or Idaho or anywhere else, is this really a big issue? Are they really concerned that men beat women, that the men should be able to go out and participate and win sporting events against women?
You know, unfortunately today, there's not a lot of issues that Americans agree on, but this is one that over 80% of Americans agree that biological men do not belong in women's sports. And so all across the country, this continues to be something that outrages Americans, and they really want to see it to end. You know,
I'm curious, too. This is strictly a side note on this issue, but there are young men that are going out and competing in track and field, in swimming, in volleyball, you name it. They're out there, and they win. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. But I'm curious, has there been any study done that you're aware of that looks 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road to see if those young men are still living a transgender life?
No, not that I know of, but I think that would definitely be a great study and a good story to follow.
Let's shift gears, same topic, but shift a little bit. Let's talk about the military, transgender in the military. And I think of Mike Tyson, when he was at the peak of his fighting game. He would walk in, and he was a tremendous fighter. But the look in his eye, the aura of Mike Tyson told you, I might lose here. Before the fight even started, the opponent often was psyched out. And I think of the U.S. military that way. We love to talk in terms of we are the biggest, we're the most powerful military on earth. And yet I wonder, when we have men dressed as women in the military, when the military decides that transgender issues and DEI is more important, is a higher priority than military readiness, are we losing that intimidation factor with the other parts of the globe that see the U.S. military? Not our own view, but how those people were trying to deter from military action. Have we lost the Mike Tyson aura?
Absolutely. Well, we've seen countries all over the world making fun of the United States military for their embrace and protection of trans in the military. I think Russia put out a video mocking the American military and making fun of our United States military for having these biological men that are pretending to be women, you know, having all kinds of makeup on, breast implants, hormones, all kinds of things. That has nothing to do with military power and the ability to defeat our enemies. And I'd like to go a step further with that. It's a slap in the face of any female athlete, as well as our United States military, whether it's male or female soldiers, to ever put any type of attitude or perception that it's okay to lose. Because I don't know an athlete, male or female, that ever wants to lose. Every athlete wants to win, and our United States military wants to be the toughest and the most powerful military in the world.
As Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, travels around the globe, he has to sort out different cultures. We have a particular culture in the United States, and there are Western European countries that have similar cultures. But as you go to other parts of the globe, it's very different in some places. If you go to the Middle East, the gender roles are more clearly defined than they are in the West now. And so when I look at, you know, the president's getting ready to go to the Middle East, and when I look at either his job or the Secretary of State's job or anybody in that world, and they're dealing with Israel or Iran or any of those, how much more difficult does it make their job when our culture and our discussions, our culture wars, I hate to use that word, but our culture disagreements here are so far afield from anything that might even be discussed in certain parts of the world?
I think it makes it extremely hard for President Trump or Secretary Bessent or anyone, Secretary of State Rubio, when they walk in a room filled with the world's most powerful people and they may be negotiating whether it's a peace deal in some sort of foreign conflict or a trade deal, as President Trump is fighting very hard to make right now and make it fair again for American companies. But it's hard to take America seriously when America in the government level or arguments among activists or even, say, the chairman of the board of USA Fencing is embracing the lie and saying that these men who should never be taken serious, pretending to be women, that the trans issue is actually something that's important to America, because it's not.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. Let's more personal note maybe, and that is, it was only a couple of years back that you were in congressional no man's land. You didn't have committee assignments. You were frowned on by some members of the House. You are now chairing one of the most important, one of the highest profile subcommittees in Washington. Tell me about that journey. Tell me about that walk through that, because publicly, you never miss a beat, but that's got to wear you down after a while.
You know, it's been an interesting journey, but Washington, D.C. is completely disconnected with the rest of America. And that's why I am where I am today, because I never abandoned the people. I never changed who I am. The people knew who I was, even though the media lied about me. But because I've always had the support of the American people, I was able to prove it here in Washington. You see, out of members of Congress, I have one of the biggest digital footprints in Congress. I have over 11 million followers across social media platforms. I have donors from all 50 states, and that's extremely rare in the House and the Senate, as well as one of the biggest email lists in Congress. So it was when my colleagues here that were trying to basically get rid of me and make me a one-term member of Congress. They went back to their districts and they found out that people in their own districts support me even more than them.
You mentioned 11 million followers. That's just an incredible number, especially for a congressional district where typically there's 800,000 people in any given congressional district. Clearly, you're reaching people all over the country. You sent out a message this past week that talked in terms of America's role in the world. In Gaza, we see war. In Russia, in Ukraine and Russia are at war. We see Pakistan and India now on the brink of war. the Trump administration is debating whether or not to talk to Iran. I like how we're talking about whether or not to talk. But I'm curious, what is, when you've got your finger on the pulse of the average American, what should America's role be in all these international affairs all around the globe?
Well, you know, there's very little daylight between me and President Trump on this issue. He's on record for decades talking against these foreign wars and America's involvement. And I can tell you firsthand, as a daughter of a Vietnam combat veteran, Vietnam was a horrible war, and we lost, and we shouldn't have been involved. And then we look at the war in Iraq, where we were sent looking for weapons of mass destruction, and there wasn't any. And then Afghanistan was a complete waste as we were looking for Osama bin Laden, and he wasn't there. And Americans are really sick and tired of paying for these foreign conflicts, having to be the world's police, and watching our military men and women run off to be blown to pieces and come back as broken souls, both emotionally and mentally. And this is just something we're sick of. And there's a hypocrisy. And here's the hypocrisy. We've watched our border be invaded for years and years and years. And the real enemy to Americans are the cartels that are murdering Americans every single day with their drugs and their fentanyl. And also the outrageous and horrific human trafficking that comes across our border. And then to watch our government pay for it, protect it, and allow it to continue. So it's hard to tell the American people, it's hard to tell me that we're supposed to go bomb and blow up a Houthi, and I don't even know what a Houthi is and never seen one, and I couldn't find one in Rome, Georgia. I asked people at the Waffle House, I asked people at the Walmart, hey, you ever seen a Houthi? And they're like, a what? But I can tell you that every single person that I talk to back home knows somebody or has a family member that died of a drug overdose, and every emergency room across this nation has people coming in you can't even count them, coming in with drug overdoses every single night in emergency rooms, and that's because of the cartels. But so it's outrageous to me to see posts on social media saying, we're going to bomb Iran, when we can't even bomb the cartels in Mexico.
I lived for a couple of years in Ghana, and in Ghana they dealt with a number of different issues, including corruption, including things at their border where they had, it was a little different, but different issues. And as I look at the way we deal with our border, and I think here's a developing country, and how they dealt with theirs seemed so much further advanced. Is the system here broken? And I don't mean is the law broken, because it seems like right now we're enforcing the law that was on the books. We had at least 4 years where we did not, and we saw the result. But is the system of being able to enforce that, whether that's congressionally, whether that's from the executive branch, whether that's from the men and women that actually work on the border, is that system broken, or is it simply it wasn't given the right opportunity to exercise what's already written as the law of the land?
I don't think the system is broken. I think we have the Democrat Party that has become an enemy within. They literally embraced and promoted and broke our constitutional immigration laws. And they were the best business partner that the cartels could ever ask for. The cartels became enriched by tens of billions of dollars under Democrat leadership in this country. And we have a judicial coup actually happening right now where judges are ruling against the President of the United States and the ability to deport criminal illegal aliens. So I don't think our system is broken. I think our system is being abused. And I believe that the Democrat Party is you know, at one day in time, we would call it treason. And I think we should have that discussion again.
Final question. We've talked about Mexico here. There's a little gulf, a little body of water down between Florida, around the Gulf states and around Mexico that has long been known as the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, it's part of North America and Central America. The president has signed an executive order that says we're going to refer to that as the Gulf of America. Tell me why that matters.
Well, as the president said, it's a matter of American pride. The Gulf is extremely important to our country, and the people that live along the Gulf, the businesses that work along the Gulf, the powerful oil companies that drill for oil and natural gas in the Gulf of Mexico, and also to our men and women in uniform, our military that defends the Gulf. And it's the American people that pay for that. However, Mexico, they don't deserve to call it the Gulf of Mexico. They traffic drugs and people across the Gulf, and they abuse the United States of America across that waterway. And so I am honored to have the Gulf of America Act being voted on this week on the House floor. And it's one of President Trump's most favorite executive orders, so much so he keeps a map of it next to the Resolute desk in the Oval Office for every meeting, every press conference, and every single day.
Congresswoman, thanks for the time.
Thank you.